left. Hey, before I jump in, I just want to thank the sponsors and the organizers of this conference for having not only myself and Bike Houston participating, but all the speakers. I think we just have to pause for a moment and recognize that the organizations that are sponsoring this are really helping lead our city in an important direction. We need to support them. It's not an easy journey that we're on in this environment, and thank the people that are organizing and sponsoring. We should have a lot more people than are here today. As you know, you're here, but a lot of great speakers covering a lot of important issues. So,
Thank you.
No, it's been my pleasure to be here. So, as mentioned, my name is Michael Payne. I'm representing Bike Houston, and I'm going to give you a bit of a presentation about uniting people, improving your ride, and transforming our city in the process. What I plan to cover are these 4 or 5 topics. I'm going to speak for a few minutes about Houston and the situation that we're facing. I'm going to talk about Bike Houston, let you know who we are and what we're doing. Talk about the bike plan, and we're going to talk about the path forward as a city and as a group of people. And we're going to try and leave some time for questions and discussion, because I think it's easy to do in this format. It's really helpful in terms of getting people's individual issues addressed. So first of all, in terms of Houston, what are the facts? What are our challenges, and then what are our opportunities? One of the things that we have to recognize is that, as has been mentioned, we're the 4th largest city, going to be the 3rd largest city in the country. We are unconstrained in terms of our geography, as well as our regulatory framework. So, whereas in the Netherlands, as Tom Bacon was saying, you might have a regulation prohibiting the sprawl and forcing density, we have not structured our society that way, and we've created a real challenge in terms of our infrastructure in the process. So we've ended up with a city of 6.2 million people, and I say a city loosely, and this is a real challenge for nonprofit organizations, because only 1/3 of the population lives in the city of Houston, 2/3 are outside. We've got 9 counties, we have 25 different management districts, and so if you're a small nonprofit trying to engage with the people that are investing in infrastructure, that creates a real hurdle to being efficient. And that's something that we're struggling with as we try and drive change. We have a low population density, and we have a lot of roads. So our cost structure, if you think about it from an economic perspective, is grossly skewed in a bad direction. So we have, in terms of maintaining, building roads, and building other sorts of infrastructure like sidewalks and bikeways, we're at a gross disadvantage to any city that has a higher density. And that's something that we're not going to change in the short term. Even adding 100,000 people a year, we're going to struggle with that, particularly with tax caps that we put in place. So we have challenges in terms of air quality being a non-attainment zone. We have challenges in terms of a built environment which does not encourage people to get out of their houses and out of their cars and seek active forms of transportation. So as a result of that, we're in a healthcare epidemic where 2/3 of our society are either obese or overweight. We have 10% type 2 diabetes rate in our city, which is staggering, and we have 28% high blood pressure numbers for our city. These are serious health problems that are shortening people's lives. They're reducing the amount of time that grandparents are going to spend with their grandkids, and they're pushing up our costs dramatically. So type 2 diabetes, about $5,000 a year, cost to deal with that condition. So, compared to our peers around the country, and I'm a big believer in benchmarking and looking at where we are ranked compared to other cities, we're pretty much bottom quartile when it comes to a lot of the key metrics related to cycling, but also active transportation and other sorts of issues. Whether you're looking at collision rates, fatality rates, miles in infrastructure, number of staff in public works department of 4,500 people that are bicycle people. So we've got one person who's a bike ped coordinator now. We're starting in that sort of position. And those are, it's important to be aware of that as we approach the challenges, because and be honest about what they are. I mean, look outside of our city and learn from other cities as much as we can. There are also a lot of opportunities as we look forward. So as a city, we know that we have a lot of space. So while we have congestion on our highways, particularly during rush hour, we have these huge right-of-ways. So I rode down from our office on Payne this morning. It's a 5-lane, one-direction road from downtown down to here, right? We can, we could easily use parts of that right-of-way for better pedestrian conditions, more trees, more shading, and more bikeways, and we're working to make that happen. We have mild winters, we have a flat topography, we do have economic growth in our city, as Tom Bacon was talking about earlier. That's important. A lot of cities are struggling, and we're struggling too with our own budgets, but at least we have, and we will continue to have, due to our position as a global energy center, we will have revenue and we'll have a tax base in our city. So the other thing that we have going on here is that we have a lot of people who own bicycles, and when you start digging into the numbers and looking at what's happening, you see that about 200,000 bicycles a year are coming into the Houston market through a variety of channels. And you can easily get to a number that says there are about 1.5 million bicycles in the metropolitan area. You can get to some higher numbers as well, but if you just look at that and you think, gee, we've got some opportunities. What are we going to do to unite the situation and to drive change? Or what do people really want in terms of a city? So there's a lot of research been done on a national level around where people want to live, what kind of place they want to be in, and we're referencing here some Forbes and Business Week, best places to live, healthiest cities, quality of life indexes. The cities that score the highest are the cities that are bicycle-friendly cities, and that's not a term that Bike Houston made up. That's a term that's used by the League of American Bicyclists, which is our nationwide sister organization, no affiliation to Bike Houston, but it's another nonprofit working on a federal level. And they come in and they rank cities. And we're a bronze level city. That's basically the lowest level rating you can be in terms of a city. It goes bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond. And they look at metrics like ride mode share, how many people are riding. They look at the collision rate. They look at the number of miles of bike lanes, and then all of these different factors. So we're just beginning this journey to become a more bicycle-friendly city. But the places that have advanced further are the most desirable cities in our country. And when you think about and you look at what people want, this pie chart on the right side of the screen breaks down the public into a couple of different categories. And there's a group of categories of riders who are confident and enthused. Riders is the red piece of the pie, the small pizza-shaped one. That's maybe like 6%. You've got a strong and fearless group of maybe 1 or 2% who will ride anywhere, anytime. But this big green chunk is interested but concerned. And probably most of you are in this category. You probably own bicycles. They sit in your garage a lot. Sometimes you strap them on the back of your car. Sometimes you go ride, from your neighbor's house, but you're probably not getting on your bike and riding across the city to get to a destination that's more than a few miles away where you have to cross large streets. And this is the segment that Bike Houston is really reaching out to. We're not about, serving the fearless or the people that are going to ride no matter what. We're about, the people who want to have something better than they have today, probably already have assets in their own personal portfolio. So if you think about 1.5 million people who own bicycles, $500 a piece roughly, that's $750 million, largely of stranded assets that are sitting in people's garages that can be unlocked by having a good, healthy bike network. And that we're investing $220 million in our Bayou Greenways initiative. We're paying millions and millions of dollars in healthcare costs, to our healthcare providers here in the medical center, while we sit in one of the areas that really isn't linked in at all. So you can ride down Brays Bayou, but to get from Brays Bayou into the medical center is really an unpleasant and difficult experience, which is ironic, but it's the situation we're in. So our vision is really to unite people, deliver a network which allows people to unlock those assets, to use them comfortably in a low-stress manner, so you don't feel like you're putting your family, in the earning power at risk by getting on your bicycle. So we are the nonprofit advocacy organization that's working to advance that mission, getting more people cycling more safely, more often. And we're doing it through a couple of different channels. There are 3 main areas that we're working on to make this happen. The first is through the development of better infrastructure, which means better planning and better implementation. So we're working closely with Jeff and Amar on the Bicycle Master Plan, which is all about creating the vision. We'll talk about that in a minute. We're working hard on enforcement of the laws that protect cyclists' lives, and we're working hard on education of both people who ride bikes and people who drive cars, because they're equally important to reducing collisions between those two groups of people. In terms of the people we're serving, we see ourselves serving not only the people who own the bicycles, so those 1.5 million bicycles or so out there, and you could get to a 3 million number if you apply that interested but concerned percentage of about 55 or 60% to the total metropolitan Houston area population. That's how we get to a 3 million number that we want to unite and engage in developing a better city. So how are we doing it, and what's been going on? I'm just going to run you through what's been happening over the last 2 years to give you some perspective of our evolution over this time period, and then we'll go on to the Bicycle Master Plan. So going back to the first quarter of 2014, the first staff person for Bike Houston started. That was me. Prior to that, Bike Houston existed as a volunteer organization with no staff and no office, and a limited number of members, about 80 members, and limited amount of resources in terms of where we were. We in the first quarter of 14, we launched what we called was our Goal Zero campaign, which was focused on reducing collisions between people riding bikes and people driving cars. And it was a series of suggestions to the mayor and the administration, a series of suggestions to people who drive cars, and a series of suggestions to people who ride bikes about practical things you can do. It's about 5 recommendations to reduce crashes and reduce fatalities. Within about 60 days, Mayor Parker said she'd like to partner with us on that campaign, and she started taking action. So there were key things that came out of that, such as doing a public service announcement around raising awareness of bicyclists on the road. There was a key piece around enforcement of the 3-foot safe passing law, what's called the Vulnerable Road Users Act, which had been passed but had not been enforced at all. And working with the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem Ed Gonzalez, we were able to get HPD to do some undercover sting operations with people on bicycles in plain clothes riding with support up ahead to write some tickets and issue some warnings around the safe passing ordinance. Most importantly, though, out of that series of suggestions is the Bicycle Master Plan. So we knew that as a city, well, first of all, we hadn't done a Bicycle Master Plan in over 20 years, and we knew that other cities around the country were evolving with that as a foundation. And that plan is really fundamental to building a united vision about where we were going, not just within the cycling community, but within a broad group of stakeholders, including the Public Works Department, the Planning Department, the Police Department, the Health Department, the Parks and Recreation Department, and others. And that was really the key decision that she made to go ahead and do that really has been putting us in motion over the last 2 years. She did say initially that she wasn't going to pay for it at all, or she said she would match whatever Bike Houston could raise, and just to put things in perspective, we had about $20,000 in the bank at that time, and this is a plan that would cost about $500,000 for a city our size, so she said she would put in whatever Bike Houston could put in. Maybe that was no, I think that wasn't disingenuous. She just wanted some participation and buy-in into the process, and we appreciate the need for that. So we were able to raise money through some grant writing, thanks to the Houston Endowment. The city matched that. We also were able to get other partners involved, HGAC being an important one, the Houston Parks Board, Tom Bacon coming along as well, and in that process we set off with the bike planning process. We were able to hire some staff. We grew our membership from about 80 to about 550 due-paying members in the first year, and we hired our first two staff. So then, at the beginning of this year, we moved out of my house into an office in Midtown. My wife was very excited about that. That freed up a lot of garage space. We opened a small office in Midtown, and we hired a 4th staff person, which is where we are now. And we've grown the membership to over 1,000 members since then. So in terms of the advocacy piece, that's what how we've been evolving. This is just a quick peek at where our members are located as of yesterday. And the membership is very important to us, not only because it represents an important revenue stream. We get no money from any governments, but also because it's a source of volunteers, and we really rely upon our volunteers to deliver our program and to engage with the public. And you know, what we're doing is it's sort of fundamental blocking and tackling for nonprofits. We're going to city council, we're speaking there, we're engaging regularly with the different departments. We are engaging with the public because 1,000 members is great, but a city our size, to be average compared to our peer groups, like the largest cities in the country, should have something around 18 paid staff and about 5,000 due-paying members. So that would put us sort of an average. And to be top quartile, just put it, this is a fun statistic. Pro rata, Houston were where Seattle is today. We'd have 75 paid staff, 35,000 members, and a budget of $7 million a year working on bicycle advocacy, right? So that kind of, that's one extreme, and this is where we are. So that, you know, we're on a journey, we're making good progress, but that's
opportunity.
That is all opportunity. Yes, ma'am, I agree. So how do we make this opportunity? What does the bike plan have to do with this? So the bike plan is really the foundation upon which a city evolves. And it's important to understand what that means. It's not just a map of where we want to put our routes. The bike plan is really a process that we all have to go through to come up with a list of priorities, but also to understand the changes that we need to make to our policies and the sorts of programs we need to have to change our city and our culture. And it's something that takes about 12 months to run. We're about halfway through that process now. It involves multiple stakeholder engagement steps in the early stages in terms of collecting ideas. We've gone through that process. We've held meetings around the city, talked to about 5,000 cyclists, and we have a team of consultants working with the planning department as well as the Bicycle Advisory Committee to synthesize those into a draft bike plan, which we're doing now. And that'll be coming out this winter, or maybe as late as January, but in the near future, which will then take back out to the public and look for a new round of engagement and feedback on how that works. We'll prioritize the improvements that we believe need to be delivered, and then we'll work on the implementation piece of that bike plan. But I mean, the fundamental concept is that we need to create a new network of low-stress corridors that provide access to all sorts of people across all neighborhoods. And one thing that's important to keep in mind is that this is absolutely about serving Houston and serving a very diverse city. And you know, we have participants at this conference which represent one segment of our city, but we have incredibly diverse city. I mean, if you saw Stephen Kleinberg's presentation, he does an amazing job of helping people raise awareness. And quite frankly, there are a lot of people in the city who don't understand the city they live in. They don't know the city they live in. They don't know that 24% of our city lives at poverty level or below, right? That's $24,000 a year for a family of 4 people. And you can live your entire life going to your office in the Energy Corridor and then driving back to West U without ever experiencing that segment of society. That segment of society can't afford a car. A car costs about $8,000 a year. Maintenance, insurance, everything goes into it. A bicycle represents an opportunity for that segment of society to really save a lot more money towards their housing, towards their food, towards their healthcare costs. And a lot of people don't recognize how the bike plan will help that underserved community be better served. It also, you know, and part of the problem we have, and one of the things that we'll come to is that is the representation or the lack of representation that we have in our government for the diversity in our city, and that's a major issue in the implementation of this program. But fundamentally, by developing this network, by engaging with the community to identify where people ride, where they want to ride, we will get more people riding more often. That'll create fewer, it'll reduce congestion on the roadways. It will improve people's health, and it'll improve our air quality, and just improve the quality of life in general. So we're excited about that, and it'll also reduce collisions. And we know that as cities evolve and as more people ride, the collision rates decline. Drivers become more accustomed to how to interact with cyclists, how to pass them safely. That's very important. So we've set as a goal to become a gold level city. That's 2 steps up over the next 10 years. That means about a an 8 to 10-fold increase in mode share. That mode share is, when you choose to make a trip, you choose to either walk, take public transportation, drive your car, or take your bicycle effectively. And we want to see a big increase there. That is an aggressive growth, but it's a growth rate that's been achieved by other cities in our country. And I'm not just talking about Portland. It's been achieved by Washington, D.C., for example, by making it safer, which we know is the main hurdle to overcome. People choose that mode more frequently. In terms of this process, I'm going to plug this several times. The cities, and I'm surprised that Amar didn't mention himself, that HoustonBikePlan.org is the website for the city where you can put your email in, and they will keep you updated as they go about their stakeholder engagement process. And I would urge you all to do that if you haven't done that already, and to track what they're doing and be engaged in the process. In terms of the Bicycle Advisory Committee members, I just wanted to throw a slide in to show, not everybody who could be involved is involved, but there is a nice representative group of organizations that are participating in the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and there's plenty of opportunity for other organizations to get involved through the stakeholder engagement process, and I would encourage you to bring your organizations and your network to bear on this to the extent that you can. In terms of the schedule and the final steps, we're now between step 4 and 5 here, between 3 and 4. And we're getting ready to come out with the draft plan here in the next 2 months, as it says. We'll go into the public outreach around the draft plan, and then it will go ultimately to the Planning Commission, City Council, and the new mayor for endorsement in the spring. So, in terms of moving forward as a city and as an organization, what do we need to make this happen? I mean, first and foremost is that we need unity. We operated for the last 20 years without really unifying cyclists, without having a voice in front of the City Council, in front of the mayor, to the degree that is necessary. And if we don't unite around this, we won't see an implementation of the plan once the plan is passed. So, from Bike Houston's perspective, we want to see delivery of a quality bike plan first and foremost, but then we really have to position for implementation of those priorities that are identified in the bike plan. And that means we need to demonstrate unity through membership by getting people to show up at events. And if we do that, then City Council will agree to fund things and to put more cash into the solution. And it will require budget in order to make it happen. We know that the Rebuild Houston plan, when they tear up a street to do the drainage or to rebuild the street, that's the opportunity to do the bike plan as well, to the extent it makes sense. But we're also very interested in seeing a percentage of the next transportation bond offering for the City of Houston cover bike and ped infrastructure improvements. And we're getting ready to push on that and make that happen as well when it rolls out. Other cities have done this successfully. Atlanta just did this with a 13% allocation to bike ped infrastructure. It's critical that we don't miss that opportunity as well. So, we'll keep engaging on those points. We've run a engagement process with all of the city council candidates and mayoral candidates for the election that's going on right now. You need to make sure you vote, all of you, and hopefully you've registered. Early voting is going on right now. If you're curious about how the candidates feel about bicycle issues, you can go to our website, bikehouston.org, and you can read their responses to our questionnaire, and you will see differences between the candidates. We don't endorse a particular candidate because we're a 501c3, and that's not permitted by law, but we are interested in disclosure of the candidates' positions. And then finally, we're working to keep developing our own organization. So that means growing our membership, growing our volunteer pool, growing our board, and our staff as well. And we're looking for good people who share that vision, who want to get engaged at whatever level that may be for you to be sustainable within your own life. But we have a great team of people working on different things. And from retired people to expat spouses to college students, you name it, professionals helping out in different ways. I just want to touch on two things that are coming along in terms of events. We have the Moonlight Ramble coming up this weekend. barring a postponement due to flooding, but keep an eye on that. It's the 43rd year that's been going on. And then we'll be at Market Square on November 7th for the HDX Bike Fest. And we have a lot of other things going on our calendar, which I would encourage you to keep checking out on bikehouston.org. So I think I'm going to stop with that particular point and take whatever questions you may have. Happy to answer any sort of question.
I can only assume, I don't know, that all of this is being interwoven with access to the greenways, volume development and the north-south corridor link-ups.
Yeah.
Trying to link everything, so.
That's correct.
And I meant to ask this with the last speaker over there. I've had experiences with greenways in Northern California, and it really helps when you have porta potties, even if they're next to schools or whatever, because then you can stay out for longer than an hour and a half.
Yes, totally agree with all those things. And so just in terms of the bike master planning process, part of the early step in the process is understanding what our existing infrastructure is, what our needs are, and what our resources are yet to be developed. So looking at the center point utility corridors, for example, as an undeveloped right-of-way, which could provide important linkages as part of the planning process, as is looking at the shared use paths that run along the bayous that exist today and will be built over the next 5 years as that $220 million is deployed, as Tom Bacon was discussing earlier. But input, what's key to this is that people show up and they say, hey, we need some public restrooms that function out here in these spaces. If you want people to use them, make them user-friendly. And if people don't show up and say that, it doesn't happen. So that's where we really need you to show up and say, hey.
Michael, do you mean by show up, you mean put input into the plan or?
Engage, correct, yes. So I mentioned we had about 3,000 people provide input in the first round of 5 or 6 meetings. We're going to go through another phase of that starting here soon, but just participating in any small way, getting onto the list, registering your email, showing up at a meeting, sending in your ideas. You might think, oh, but I'm just one person, but there
are other people.
It is critical to our evolution. If people do not do this, then the city council will look and they say, oh, only 10 people showed up at the meeting. Oh, only 100 people sent in their emails. We're not putting any money into it, because people don't care, and they're looking at all the other things that are happening, and this is why all of these people, this interested but concerned 60% of our society, the more we get engaged in the process in whatever small way, join as a member. That helps us for a staff person. Otherwise, we might lose a staff person, if people don't join. More questions. How about some hard questions? Controversial questions.
So I know a lot of cyclists who think that the bikes need to be in the lane with the cars because they're not visible off to the right, that the cars don't pay attention to what's on the right. And also they'll race past, whereas if you're in the lane, they have to slow down, and then maybe you're going to go faster.
So that's a great question, and just to make sure everyone understood it, the question was really, where is the safe place to position yourself if you are riding in the road where there's not a designated bike lane? Is that your question?
No.
That's not your question.
No, they're opposed to the bike lane because you're off to the right and you're less visible to oncoming cars who are not slowing down because they don't see anything and there's no obstacle to them for their speed.
They're opposed to bike lanes in general. Yeah.
So that
there are
just narrow bike lanes that are within.
Well, especially if they're narrow and if there's no barrier. If there's a barrier, sure.
So one of the issues that we have is that most of the infrastructure, almost all of the infrastructure in Houston, was installed in the 90s. A lot of it was not to code then, and it's certainly not to code now. And I'm talking about the width of the bike lane. So if you go to West Park Drive, there are 3-foot bike lanes. Cars are going, the speed limit may be 40, but they're going 60. And it's not a safe facility, and it's a disservice to cyclists by having it there and saying this is a designated bike route. So that's something that's being addressed in the bike plan as well. Being visible and being safe is paramount, to the experience. I mean, the worst part about my job is having to deal with people who've been involved in crashes. And, we do cycling instruction and training. We do a traffic skills 101 class. We also do what's called the league certified instructor class, which is a 3-day safety test. And in many cases, It's true, being in the middle of the lane, what we call taking the lane, is the safest approach to making sure that you're not putting yourself at risk. If you try and stay all the way to the right-hand side of a lane, you're at risk because of the potholes, the conditions of the road. You're also at risk of people trying to squeeze by you, and that's what you want to avoid. Yes?
One other comment about the bike safety, or really a question, how can we also educate cyclists to be aware of their relationship with pedestrians as we have more and more ways
Yes.
as we have in Buffalo Bayou Park.
Right.
You've got some issues that
Yes.
cyclists that think that they own, you've got pedestrians, everybody doesn't have headphones,
Yes.
doesn't listen.
Yeah, this is a major issue as we make these investments in the bayous, as more and more people say, hey, I want to ride my bike and it's not safe on the road, so I'm going to go to the bayous. And the pressure is increasing there. We've been working very closely with the Buffalo Bayou Partnership as well as Houston Parks Board on getting bicycle etiquette cards out. So we produced those. We were at the grand reopening passing those out. We were also giving away free bells in the Bells on the Bayou campaign, trying to educate cyclists about their obligation to respect all users. If they don't, we will be prohibited from using the shared use paths. I mean, this is just the reality. It's not a place to train at high speed. If you're training for a triathlon, don't do it in the bayous. This is a place where you can ride safely, but if someone's walking in the lane, you need to slow down. You can't yell on your left and go flying past it. That will result in us being banned, and we're working hard to get that message out to cyclists.
What about a lot of bike lanes that you see that are just deposits for pollution, rocks? I mean, it's really more unsafe to have a bike lane that is full of debris
Yes.
than to not
Yes.
have a bike lane at all.
So the city has not prioritized maintenance of the bike lanes. I mean, obviously, the city, going back to what we've allowed to happen, which is a very big, low-density city with a high ratio of miles of blacktop and concrete to the number of taxpayers, we're in a poor position to maintain the roads, let alone the bikeways, right? And we need to think about seriously how we want to structure our tax regimes to maintain our infrastructure and deal with that. And I think it's going to continue to be a challenge, and we're going to have to be, putting pressure on. The best thing we can do is unite, and the bigger our group is, and the more we vote as a group, and the more we show up at meetings and say this is important to us, the higher the priority goes with Public Works and Planning Department. So, please join as a member. Engage is my answer to all of you. Yes.
I live near Commonwealth, and so I decided to complain about cars parking in the bike lane. Not that I ride in it, but there's cars parking across from this bar. So I complained about that, and they did come out and put up a sign. They put up a new post, and I mentioned that, well, there's still the next block. And anyway, and I said, why can't the signs, the no parking be part of the bike lane signage or something like that? And he says, well, the two had nothing to do with each other. The reason it's no parking is just that side of the street had been designated no parking. He said cars are allowed to park in bike lanes. So is that true?
Well, I think the Mayor Parker has actually been tweeting "Don't park in bike lanes," believe it or not, which we're pleased with. So I think in terms of whether in that particular situation it's legal to park there, I guess it's not, given that
side of the street is no
that street is designated no parking. In terms of more broadly saying, can you park in bike lanes? I was
told yes.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that. If that sort of thing comes up, we would love for you to send us an email and say, hey, what's the issue here in this area, or can you help us with this? And we will take those sorts of issues forward as your advocate to Public Works or to HPD or to whomever the mayor is appropriate, and try and fight for those causes.
Because there's also no sidewalk in that particular stretch.
Right.
And so I know someone who walks her dogs, and she walks in the bike lane.
Yes.
And also complains about there being cars pushed in.
Yes.
I think I have forwarded it to you guys, but I can do it again because the guy replied and said, bicycles can just go around the cars.
Okay, great. The last thing I'm just going to mention is I have some